What happens if we bring together the greatest chess player of all time, considered by many to be Garry Kasparov, with his best game ever? Then we get an impressive stroke of genius that we're gonna see today in this video. Where in 1999, where Kasparov with the white pieces was facing Topalov with the black pieces. If you've never seen this game, you don't know how lucky you are to be able to enjoy this game for the first time. All of us who have already seen it, even though we love watching it over and over and over, we won't be able to feel that emotion again of seeing it for the first time. So enjoy it very much and learn a lot from it. Topalov played the pure defense against him. Back then, it wasn't used much in elite chess. For example, the double king's pawn or the Sicilian defense were used much more. However, the pure defense wasn't the most common choice at that time. You know that always, 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 if they don't occupy the four central squares, we're going to try to occupy them with our pawns. This is what we always try to do because the center is extremely important, as you know, and we've shown it on several occasions. Knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, knight c3, developing the knight while attacking this pawn, and here the most theoretical move of all would be g6. You could also go into the e5 variation, and this would be a kind of Philidor defense. In this case, Topalov opted for the move g6. Usually, the most theoretical move when we play d6 is to play the Perk defense. Could we go into a King's Indian defense? Yes, with some nuances, but yes. The most common thing here is to go into the Perk defense. The bishop will be placed on g7, this pawn will be placed on g6, along with its partner on d6, and they'll do a great job of controlling the center from a distance. The game continued with bishop e3, bishop g7, queen d2, thus providing the king with a quick castle towards the queen side. In this type of game where black tries to fianchetto their dark-squared bishop, usually the player with the white pieces wants to try to castle long to launch a strong attack on the opponent's castled king. And what kind of openings does this happen? In the Perk, in the King's Indian defense, in the Dragon Sicilian, in all those where black wants to fianchetto their dark-squared bishop. Then the game continued with c6, exactly as we were suggesting. This move allows for control of the center, and also allows for an escape route for the queen along this diagonal right here. The game continues with f3, a theoretical move in this type of setup. What this move allows is not only to reinforce the e4 point, but also to reinforce this g4 square, a very important square for the jump, for example, of the knights, or even in the future of the bishops. Many of you are probably thinking, well, but this f3 is actually cutting off the knight's development. This knight will be able to come out through e2 without any problem, either before or after the light-squared bishop. By 5, Topalov is trying to tell us something here, right? You're gonna castle long, so I'll launch a strong attack on the queen side to checkmate you. That's the analysis we should draw when they push on one side. So Kasparov says, you know what? If I see you're attacking my castling position hard, I'll wait a bit to castle and develop my pieces first. Lest I castle and you quickly attack me way too strongly. Knight b7 and bishop h6. Typical maneuver, right? To exchange our bishop for the fianchettoed bishop. This queen and bishop battery maneuver is very common when we face a strong fianchetto from our opponent. Now, with this move, it's true that Topalov exchanged these bishops. Normally, if the king were castled, we wouldn't want to exchange, okay? We'd want to wait for white to capture so we can recapture with the king. Why? Because if we're castled and we capture here, the queen enters with a lot of force. Hard to kick out, and she controls our castling position very well. On the other hand, if we aren't castled here and the bishop comes, it's fine to capture here because the king isn't castled yet. And I'll tell you one thing, we're going to try to castle on the queen side. Even if it's advanced, it doesn't matter at all. The king will live just fine there. He'd live much worse on these squares here where the queen controls with too much power. As a subscriber suggested, I'll leave the captured pieces here on the side. If you want, look, I'll leave some on each side, so that you yourselves, from home, can keep track perfectly as the pieces are captured. I thought it was a great idea, so I'm gonna leave them here. The game continued with bishop b7, a3. As you can see, this is a waiting move, because he doesn't want to castle immediately, as the attack would be very strong. So why play a 3 then? It's not played just because. The idea is clear: to prevent potential pawn advances that would start bothering the pieces defending our long castling. I'm going through this a bit faster, because the brilliance of Kasparov's game will start in a few moves, though we can still learn many lessons from these opening moves. You know, my main goal is to take what's truly difficult, like World Champions games, and try to make them simple, so everyone understands and can take those lessons into their own games. Topalov broke the center with e5. Well, most of you would already be thinking about whether to capture or advance or what to do. The idea is that many times, when there is a break, the best thing is to wait. If we capture, we are usually benefiting our opponent. If your opponent offers you a capture, why do you think that is? Because it is good for them if you trade. If you trade, what would happen? Well, simply, they could probably recapture with the pawn, strengthen the center even more, weaken this square or this column here, and probably black. Black would be quite comfortable with all of this. However, what happens is that it is also very good for us if they capture. If you capture me, you're left without pawns in the center. You would not have any pawn in this square. Now I have 2 and you have 1. So, for example, long castle, which is something I wanted to do, and on top of that I place the rook on the same column that, if you want, can be opened. And now, if I capture, besides, this rook is going to live much better. That is, in conclusion, what I am seeing is that it is much better not to capture and wait than to capture prematurely. And this lesson, believe me, you can all apply it in your games. The game continued with queen e7, king b1, a move that is always good when you castle long. The king is always better on b1 than on c1. Something that happens to me, and I correct it more and more, and that might happen to you too, is that you focus on looking for the best move around here before playing king b1, and many times, it is a priority to play king b1 first and then think about everything else. It is true that, in quotes, we are losing a tempo. However, many times it has happened to me that I regret later not having the king on b1, and it is already too late to place it. Logically, if I share my mistakes with you, then you probably will not have to make them yourselves too. You can learn from my mistakes. The game continued with a 6, a very logical move, and I will explain why. This pawn here was simply defended by the c pawn, so any break on d5 could be dangerous, because we would already be attacking the base of this structure. The black pieces with the move a6 reinforce this whole pyramid very well, and probably the long castle looks safer and safer. Kasparov starts maneuvering with his knights, long castle from Topalov, and this knight jumps to the b3 square, which is where it wanted to be after making this double jump. It allowed it to be placed in a better square than on d2, and on top of that, leave the way clear for the dark square bishop. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes pawn. Could you capture with the knight? Yes, without any kind of problem, you could capture with the knight. Simply, Kasparov decided to capture with the rook because he thought this rook would be much more active than the knight. It's a move that probably few of you... This pawn is driving me crazy, forgive me. Few of you, would have captured with the rook. I include myself because it's a difficult answer. They could play, for example, this advance, and they'd be putting too much pressure on us. However, this advance wouldn't be very good directly. Why? Because we'd move the rook back without any kind of problem, and now black has created quite a few weaknesses that, along with our pieces, we can exploit. Why is that? Because the king is a little bit weak. Therefore, here with the rook over here, what Kasparov is doing is trying to provoke this advance right here. Obviously, Topalov does it because it's the most logical move in the world. And after the rook's retreat, he improves his knight to b6. Careful, this isn't a losing position for black, not by a long shot, okay? I'm just trying to explain to you why Kasparov captured with the rook to force this advance and weaken the queen side a bit. G3, a very interesting move. Why? Because it allows the development of the bishop through this square. Logically, Kasparov's idea isn't just to give a check to the king, right? Being the best player, or one of the best players of all time, he's not going to try to give a check just for the sake of it. His idea is to improve the bishop, and he sees that on this diagonal, check or no check, it controls many squares on the board. So this bishop on h3, for example, also the queen on f4, cutting across these two diagonals, and this knight, which could jump to this square here, a 5, which is a tremendously weak square. His pieces would suddenly start to make sense and act in harmony. So the game continued in the following way. King b8, the knight moves directly to a5, attacking the bishop on b7, which quickly retreats so as not to be lost, as it's a fundamental piece for defending the castled king. The bishop also moves to h3 even though it doesn't give a check. The central d-pawn moves to d5 and the queen moves to f4. And what Kasparov has achieved is talking to his pieces and saying, hey, where would you like to be? This knight, this queen, and this bishop have suddenly moved into practically their best positions. A check is given, the king moves aside, and now the last piece, which wasn't doing anything, joins its partner on the two central files. The position is really beautiful. It really is. This pawn advances, and here is where Kasparov's true genius begins. Where's this knight gonna move? The truth is there are only two reasonable options, right? Moving here or moving there, since jumping forward would be giving away a pawn. Why? Because the knight is being attacked by 3 pieces and is only defended by 1 pawn. In this case, it's true that after the recapture by, for example, the knight, let's assume it's captured with this knight or that one, it doesn't matter, and recaptured with the pawn. It couldn't be recaptured because a discovered attack on the queen would be created and she'd have to move. That's true. However, this lonely pawn here would be very easy to capture in the long run. Do you know where Kasparov moved the knight? Indeed, he stepped right into the lion's den, and here is where his masterpiece begins. It's clear that he's probably going to lose this pawn. Knight takes and pawn takes. The idea is that now, logically, it can't be recaptured because the queen is being threatened. Many of you might think, can we then do knight takes pawn while our queen is under attack? Since that would be a queen trade, this would be a mistake. And let me explain, because upon capturing, the rook would capture with a check. Then the knight would be forced to come capture the rook or else move the king. But this queen could never be captured. So here, Topalov simply decided to move the queen away. Logically, a good move. You can pause the video to try and find the brilliant move Kasparov found here, which logically wasn't queen takes queen, just a queen exchange. I'm going to give the answer right now. The move was rook takes pawn. Rook takes d4, double exclamation mark, a spectacular move. He gives away the rook, but in exchange for white. Chess teacher, is taking this rook the best move the black pieces have? According to the engines, yes. Because engines defend against everything, but you'll see it's practically impossible to defend against the attack Kasparov is about to launch. So the most human and logical move would be to play king b6, and it would lead to a very even position, right? Logically, Topalov calculated much further ahead and saw that this pawn takes rook capture was favorable. You know what Kasparov did? He gave away the other rook. Rook 7, and he doesn't just give away one rook, he gives away both. This rook is definitely completely untouchable, and I'm going to show you why. If black decided to capture this rook, then queen takes d4 would follow, and this would be checkmate in a few moves. The king would have to go, for example, to b8, and then the game would continue with queen b6, and when the bishop blocks, knight c3 and queen a7 would follow, and this would end in a totally brutal checkmate. So we come to a conclusion. It's clear that this rook, let's put this back as it was, it's clear that this rook, after this sacrifice, cannot be captured. So after this check, Topalov didn't capture this second rook, but played the correct move, king b6. Very well, how does the attack continue? Kasparov used queen takes d4, now sacrificing this knight right here. Don't tell me this isn't a masterpiece and that you're not enjoying it, because it's spectacular. He gives away one rook, gives away the other, and now gives away this knight, which logically there's nothing better to do than capture it. How does the game continue? What the attack? First he comes with the pawn to give this check to the king on b4, the king escapes, and now the threat is this one right here. Queen to c3, a very good move. What's the threat? I'm sure you all see it. Queen to b3, checkmate. So how can the player with the white pieces avoid this? He only has one. Only one move works to cover this point here, and that's capturing this pawn right here. Whether with the bishop or the queen, be careful. If he captures with the bishop, it would be a huge mistake and end in checkmate in just a few moves. King to b2, and no one can stop this mate right here. No one can stop it. Even if the queen is sacrificed, the pawn would recapture and deliver mate. The correct move, which is what Topalov did, is queen takes pawn. Now I'll explain why. The idea is that while this mate is being defended, Kasparov threatens another mate. First he threatens one, then he threatens the other. Don't tell me this isn't spectacular. The only way to stop this mate is with the bishop. If this bishop were here, it couldn't defend both mates at once. Do you see? So this bishop handles this mate, and this queen handles the other mate. Spectacular. Well, I'll take this bishop. It's totally free. It's true I'm down on material, but for now, I'll take a bishop, and not something, right? From here on. Can this queen capture the rook? Logically, no, because then checkmate would follow. This queen is busy defending the other checkmate. So, while Topalov says, I'll go to c4, I'm proposing a queen trade, so Topalov would be very happy. Happy with this queen trade? Yes, round. Let's imagine we're the ones playing the white pieces. Do we want to trade queens? No. Why? Because we're down on material first, and second, because we have more of an attack. These two are the keys to knowing if we want to trade queens or not. You can listen to them again if they weren't clear, okay? By rewinding the video, they're the two keys we should always consider whenever we think about trading queens. So, well, Kasparov does the following. He captures this knight, gradually regaining material, and now he threatens this checkmate with the queen. Impressive. How is this checkmate defended? Well, there's no other move than king takes a6. Why? Because any other move would end in queen takes pawn, checkmate. Many of you might wonder, chess teacher, wouldn't it be possible to bring the rook to defend? Well, no, it wouldn't be possible, because then queen to b6 would follow, and now the attack is completely devastating. For example, if they try to come, I imagine, through here, queen to a5 checkmate would simply follow. So it's clear that it's not possible to block this checkmate right here. With the rook, the only move is to try to escape with the king, so that now, when white captures, which they did, they have an escape route by capturing this pawn. Very well. Can you imagine that Kasparov calculated all of this? Well, yes, Kasparov calculated all of this, and Karpov too. However, here, he said after the game that he didn't calculate this brilliant move. c3. Sometimes. It's not necessary to calculate the variation to the end. It's practically impossible. We're simply going to trust our intuition. We know we have a good attacking position, and we'll trust that we'll find possible moves to continue our attack. Why is this pawn advance so good? You can't capture with the queen, why? Because then it would simply follow queen takes b5, and this would be mate, see? So you can't, logically, capture this pawn with the queen. It must be captured with the king. Another very bad move, for example, would be trying to escape with the king, because then the queen would be lost. So the only move is to capture with the king. And how did the game continue? First, he gave this check with the queen. The king moved away. Another check with the queen to force this king to place itself on the first rank, and if possible on white squares, because we have the light squared bishop. And now comes a move that I love from this game. One of my favorite moves. You can pause the video to see if you find it, because I'm going to say it right now. We're going to try to bring this bishop into the attack, and how? With this move right here. Threatening a queen. This queen can't leave this diagonal. What would happen if this queen, for example, leaves the diagonal? Simply, the queen moves to c1. Checkmate. So the queen cannot leave this diagonal. So she only has one option, right? Take the bishop. But what would happen if she takes the bishop? Friends, simply queen c2 would come, the king would have to move, the rook would come, and on the next it would be mate. So this bishop can't be captured either. What can the black pieces do here? Well, they tried a very interesting move. Rook d2. So that now if I take the queen, what would happen? Well, it would simply be a queen exchange. Rook takes b2, and this would be a completely equal game. Let's put this back as it was. So this move tells Kasparov, either you play perfectly or watch out, because I'll turn the game around. But here, Kasparov found this brilliant move, Rook d7. This game is worth watching many times. Don't tell me it's not. With just one analysis, you probably won't have enough. But the good thing is, you can put it on the TV and you'll see it perfectly. Rook d7, what does this move hide? Logically, it doesn't allow capturing the queen because it's a pinned piece. Does it allow, for example, capturing the rook? That's what Topalov did. What other moves exist here? For example, what would happen if I take this bishop? Queen d2. Easier. Queen takes d2. Checkmate, okay? There are so many variations, it's sometimes hard to control them all. So the only option to save himself is rook takes rook, which is what Topalov did. And the game continued with bishop takes queen. Logically, the material here is already equal. Why? Because it's two rooks against a queen, but the key detail is that this rook on 8 is being attacked by the queen. So queen takes the rook. As you can see, the material advantage is massive, although Topalov kept playing for several moves, but Kasparov simply stopped him this way. He brought the queen to the defense, and now he simply left his pawns there, which can't be attacked in any way. And no matter how much Topalov tried to fix it, he simply comes with the king, and here you simply can't do anything else. The game concluded with this brilliant move. You cannot capture this pawn because of the check, and I take the rook. So here, the black pieces simply can't do anything. They'll enter with the queen, they'll take this pawn here, and if the black pieces try to resist, they'll take the rook. Otherwise, the queen could start taking these pawns, and they're 3 passed pawns that are going to promote. Brilliant or not, this game, well, if you want, you can watch this video again. Leave a good like if you enjoyed it, and for all those of you who want even more content still, subscribe to my free newsletter, which, by the way, I've prepared something that you're gonna love. And it'll be available starting in November, since we are practically in November already. So if you're a newsletter subscriber, you'll get some perks. I hope that you enjoyed this video. To subscribe to the newsletter, check the description or go to Chess Teacher Web. And I'll see ya in the next video, my friends. Bye.